In just 19 days, Pope Leo XIV has begun to quietly reshape the Catholic Church, not through grand speeches or dramatic confrontations, but through humble, radical actions that are echoing from the Vatican to the most forgotten corners of the world. Before we explore these 10 powerful reforms, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on this question. What would it look like if the Church truly walked alongside the poorest and most overlooked among us? The first reform is perhaps the most visible. Pope Leo has ordered that every bishop in the Catholic Church must walk barefoot in at least one public procession every year. Thousands of bishops, from Rome to the smallest mission diocese, will step out without shoes. This isn't a publicity stunt. It comes from a story that shaped the Pope's life. In 1987, when he was still Father Robert, a young missionary in Peru, a little boy came running to him, tears streaming down his face. His sister was dying, and the village priest was gone. Father Robert followed the boy down a brutal road of sharp stones and blistering heat. The child ran ahead, barefoot, like all the children in his village. Without hesitation, Father Robert took off his own shoes and walked the 2 miles barefoot. Blood dripped from his feet. Every step was agony. When they finally reached the village, an old woman kissed his hand and whispered, "You came like us. Now we believe you." From that day forward, he never wore shoes when the people around him could not. The second reform reaches even deeper into the heart of the Vatican. Every night, a section of the Vatican gardens, once reserved for cardinals and dignitaries, is opened to homeless men and women. There are no cameras, no press releases, no politicians trying to score points, just quiet hospitality. This too comes from a moment in the Pope's life. In Chicago in 1979, Robert was a student working at a soup kitchen. One night after closing, he saw an old man shivering on the church steps, his legs wrapped in newspapers for warmth. Robert sat down beside him. They didn't speak. They just sat in the cold together. Before Robert stood up to leave, the man whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." The third reform may look small to outsiders, but it sends a message that resonates around the world. Pope Leo has chosen to wear simpler papal robes, smaller crosses, and less gold. He still wears traditional vestments during formal ceremonies, but for most gatherings, he looks like any humble priest. When a journalist asked why he wore a plain white garment for a major mass, the Pope simply said, "People are hungry for truth, not fabric." He learned this during his years as an Augustinian friar, when he served food at the back of the hall rather than sitting at the head table. The fourth reform is about language. Prayers once addressed only to brothers are now spoken to brothers and sisters. Gender-neutral terms are used when they help more people feel included. Some critics have called this unnecessary, but Pope Leo has said, "God speaks to every heart. Our words should not block the sound of his voice." That conviction began under a tree in Peru when an elderly woman, after Mass, approached him in tears and said, "I finally heard myself in the prayer today." The fifth reform is vast in ambition. Pope Leo has announced the Green Vatican Initiative with a goal of making Vatican City completely carbon neutral by the year 2030. Solar panels, reduced waste, reforestation, and a new commitment to care for creation are underway. The story behind this vision is heartbreaking. In 1992, Father Robert visited a village near the Amazon rainforest. He had expected a green paradise, but found scorched earth and poisoned rivers. A little girl looked up to him and said, "We can't pray under the trees anymore. They are all gone." That moment never left him. We've just walked through 5 reforms. Which of them has touched your heart most deeply? Take a moment to think, because the next 5 may surprise you even more. The 6th reform redefines how the Catholic Church exercises authority. For centuries, almost every major decision flowed through Rome. Pope Leo is giving more decision-making power back to local dioceses so they can respond quickly to the needs of their communities. When he was assigned to a remote parish in the Andes with no phone or electricity, he saw villagers baptizing, teaching, and burying their dead without waiting for permission. One elder told him, "God already lives here. We just listen." That conviction became the seed for this decentralization. The 7th reform is interfaith dialogue. New councils have formed to bring Catholics together with leaders of Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and other faiths, not to argue, but to understand each other and serve the poor side by side. In 1990, Robert visited a refugee camp where a Muslim nurse and a Catholic priest prayed together over a sick child. Later, she said, "We may speak to God in different languages, but He hears the same pain." Pope Leo believes that faith should not build walls, it should build tables. The 8th reform is financial transparency. Annual independent audits are now public. Anyone can see where donations go. No more secrecy, no more confusion. When he discovered missing funds in a project decades ago, he worked day and night to set things right. He later said, "Money is not the problem. Silence is." The 9th reform focuses on the next generation. Pope Leo has created global youth councils to bring young Catholics together to share their hopes and challenges with church leaders. As a young priest, he often gathered children under a mango tree to listen to their questions. One teenager asked him, "Why does no one in Rome care what we think?" He replied, "Maybe one day they will." Now, as Pope, he has kept that promise. The 10th reform is a return to the confessional. More priests are being asked to spend time in confessionals each week, not just Sundays. Years ago, Robert sat for hours in a small wooden box, waiting. One night, a man finally came after 30 years away. His shoulders shook as he whispered, "Is it too late to be clean again?" Robert reached through the screen and said, "It's never too late." These reforms didn't come from a boardroom. They came from a bleeding foot on a rocky road, from a shivering man on the church steps, from a child who could no longer pray under the trees. Pope Leo XIV is not trying to make the church new. He is trying to make it real. If this journey has moved you, I invite you to do 3 simple things. Like this video to affirm that quiet acts of love still matter. Share it with someone who believes that faith can still surprise the world. And subscribe, because we are only beginning to uncover these stories. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which change surprised you most? Which one do you hope will remain long after this papacy ends? Sometimes the most revolutionary thing isn't what's said from a pulpit, it's what's whispered from the heart. Thank you for watching, and until next time, walk gently and listen deeply.